G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, Benji's POV, point of view. My point of view, however, is going to be taking on a slightly different direction. I've been focused a bit too heavily on politics lately, and I don't like that. I had different intentions for this channel when I first started it. Something different envisioned in my mind, and I just got derailed by what's going on in my country and even in my state. Just, wanting to vent and sidetracked by that, and I just misused the platform that I was trying to build. So enough of that. You might have noticed also a new intro, which I am working on that. My gifts and my skills and abilities and gifts when it comes to editing and what have you are a bit subpar. But that's okay. We'll be working on that, and hopefully as I start to be able to get access to better editing software and start to learn how to use that better, I'll be able to make it even more appealing. But in the meantime, what I wanted to talk today about, I wanted to just bring things back to the spirituality that I wanted to talk about. Things to do with spirituality, things to do with my own journey with shamanism, as well as things to do with my own journey with psychedelics, the intrinsic relationship between both shamanism and psychedelics that has existed for anywhere between 40,000 to 100,000 years. And just like break down certain little bits here and there, little revelations that I've gotten, or little teachings that I've come to understand, or just like my own sort of truths that I've come to call revelations, that I think would be helpful for everyone. And so today what I want to talk about is, do our experiences prepare us for the future and the vocational... So what I want to talk about today is, do our experiences prepare us for the future and for our vocational callings? So to begin with, I want to start with a couple of concepts, a couple of different philosophical concepts. One is called determinism. And determinism is the philosophical view that all events are determined completely and by previously existing causes. Deterministic theories throughout the history of philosophy have sprung from diverse and sometimes overlapping motives and considerations. I'm reading from a little script here. The opposite of determinism is some kind of indeterminism, otherwise called as non-determinism or randomness. And determinism is often contrasted with free will, although some philosophers claim that the two are compatible. And I would be one person to say that they are compatible, because there is another philosophical thought called pre-determinism, and the difference, the primary and significant difference between determinism and pre-determinism is that pre-determinism has the added aspect of fate, that everything is fated, everything is set out, every event that is happening and going to happen has already been predestined to happen, hence pre-determinism. Whereas determinism, it's not set in stone, but cause and effect. Once something catalyzes a whole bunch of other, like once a catalytic event happens, a whole bunch of unavoidable consequences will follow that, and it can make it possible to kind of anticipate where things are going to go. Now, with regard to that, I want to transition into shamanic calling according to the literature, because I refer to myself and call myself a shaman or a shaman elect, someone who is being initiated by the spirit world into shamanism, into becoming a full-fledged shamanic practitioner and shamanic healer. Now, in all the literature that I've read, and I've got several different books, hang on. So I wanted to get into shamanic literature. Now, there are a few books that I've been reading at the moment. The one that I'm currently reading is The Shamanic Path to Quantum Consciousness by Laurent Hewlett, which I love to pull books apart and write in the margins. That's the kind of boy that I am. Write little notes and stuff just to help me remember. I've also got Shamanic Alchemy by James Endrady. It was the first book I ever bought, owned and started to read on shamanism. Got Shaman, Invoking Power, Presence and Purpose at the Core of Who You Are by Yaakov Darling Khan. And even Sacred Energies of the Sun and Moon, Shamanic Rites of Cura Canderasimo by Erica Buenaflor, MAJD. I don't know what those qualifications mean, but there you go. And even this book, Quantum Science of Psychedelics, the Pineal Gland, Multidimensional Reality and Mind Cosmology, because there's a sort of scientific perspective and view of psychedelics and shamanism sharing such a sacred and integral relationship with one another. I thought it only fitting to, get into that a bit more. So in all of the literature that I have been reading and even in other books that I've picked up and had a look at, it would seem that within every culture where shamans have existed, there have been very specific signs that someone is undergoing the initiation process, the calling and initiation process of becoming a shaman, and elder, more experienced and recognized shamans within the community would identify these people as shaman elects. And they would say, these people are in the middle of a shamanic awakening. We need to kind of aid and guide them through this process. And these signs that surrounded a shamanic awakening were all pretty much the same when it came. Didn't matter what culture that it cropped up in, didn't matter what era it cropped up in, didn't matter what part of the world it cropped up in, it was always the same. That these people would be going through significant trauma, both and or physical and psychological trauma, near-death experiences, illnesses that be quite sickly, psychological disturbances that create distress for the shaman-elect themselves, for their family and friends, and for the community at large. Looking back on my life, this is why I believe that, one of the reasons why I believe that I am being called and initiated into shamanic work is because looking back throughout my life, I can identify all of those things. I have experienced sexual trauma as a child. I've experienced physical trauma in the form of violence, homophobic violence growing up. Verbal assault and verbal violence, emotional violence, and emotional trauma. I have experienced a lot of psychological trauma. I've been through, the mental health system and in and out of psychiatric care at one point for about 2 years. In my mid-20s, for about 2 years, I was in and out of psych wards and in and out of the emergency department because of overdoses that were deliberate and that were nearly successful. That actually landed me on life support a couple of times. So I very nearly actually died. I came very, very close, face to face with death, you might say. So there's your near-death experiences, your psychological trauma, your physical trauma, and your psychological distress. All of these things just very present in my life. For various different reasons, although usually surrounding my sexuality, which, funnily enough, the ancient American Indians considered homosexual men and homosexual or lesbian women to be called two-spirit men or two-spirit women, and they were revered as gifts of nature because they were able to approach life not from a heterosexual point of view nor from a homosexual point of view, because they were able to approach life not from a masculine point of view nor from a feminine point of view, but rather a collectively androgen point of view. And that they, through androgen consciousness, not masculine consciousness or feminine consciousness, but the amalgamation of the two, androgen consciousness, they were able to perceive things through both, like through an amalgamated male and female perspective, and come up with very unique ways of perceiving things, very unique solutions to everyday problems that one spirit men and one spirit women, or heterosexual men and heterosexual women, weren't able to do. So just as an aside, quite interesting. And so the current trajectory of my life has been just that I have experienced a lot of mental health issues. At one point I was diagnosed with bipolar, at another point I was diagnosed with comorbid or co-occurring borderline personality disorder, so both bipolar and borderline personality disorder, because these disorders were characterized by psychological distress, mood swings, self-harming behavior, substance abuse, as well as mania that could lead to delusional thinking. And it's those manic delusional episodes that psychiatrists would, Western psychiatrists would often observe people believing that they had special gifts or talents and what have you. So it's just really, really interesting because there was, and forgive me, I do not know their names, but there was a Western reporter who took a traditional shaman into a Western insane asylum, mental health asylum, just to show him about, and afterwards he took the shaman out and the shaman was in tears, and he said these people are experiencing genuine spiritual awakening and they've got no one guiding them, so they are completely distressed, and in their distress they're just being medicated and they're being dulled down and they're being told that it's all crazy, their thoughts are crazy, and they need to just realign back to prescriptive reality. They just needed to realign back to prescriptive reality according to Western psychiatry. Now, that's not to say that any and all mental illnesses aren't actually mental illnesses and shouldn't be treated in a Western context. By no means. I've had a decent amount of help through Western therapy, but Western pharmacology failed me time and time again. It always has. And I've always found myself coming back to Eastern medicines like microdosing with psilocybin, mushrooms. By microdosing, I mean not taking enough of the magic mushrooms to induce a psychedelic effect, but taking just enough that it starts to realign my inner vibrations, and it starts to bring about a general sense of well-being, and it starts to be able to put me in I'll find myself in situations that otherwise would have stressed the crap out of me, but instead of getting stressed and then spiraling in that stress, I'd find myself in total control of my emotions, total control of my thoughts, and I'd just recognize, yep, this is a stressful situation, but I'm not going to allow myself to feel any stress whatsoever. I'm just going to look for a way forward here and look at how this can be handled. I had this control, this emotional control that was previously unavailable to me, and I only had it whilst I was microdosing, which I found very, very interesting. So microdosing is still a big part of how I treat myself these days. I try and steer clear of Western pharmacology. It always ends up throwing me for a loop when I do, and makes things actually worse rather than better. And so these are the reasons why I believe, like those reasons, plus the fact that I have manifested certain gifts like clairaudience, clairvoyance. I've been called an empath many times before, specifically a Hyoka empath. Hyoka empaths are the kind of empaths whom, when you're interacting with them, they start to mirror the shadow in you. Sorry for the interruption there, my battery ran out, so I had to recharge it for a bit. But yeah, as I was saying, microdosing has just been a huge help to me, and has been the only thing with the combination of meditation and other practices that are of Eastern medicine descent and shamanic descent, have actually been much more rewarding and fulfilling and freeing for me than any treatment or spiritual path that I've tried in the last nearly 15 years since I was first diagnosed and began that journey of trying to heal myself and find healing and management within what was going on within me psychologically. So not only that, but there have also been too many instances where I have been holding on to the gift of psychometry is a spiritual gift in which one can ascertain information about the owner of an object's life just by touching it. And there have been too many times in my life, too many, where I can no longer call it coincidence, where I will be holding a personal object of someone's and I'll be jotting down what it is that I can sense and what I'm seeing and hearing come through, and then I will just relay to the person, this is what I'm picking up. And they'll be like, yeah, that happened in my life. Yep, that definitely happened. Yeah, wow, that was really happening. Yep, that's definitely true. Yep, that's true. That's me. Yep. And it wasn't vagaries, things like picking up on whether or not someone had spent a lot of time in and out of child protective services, or picking up on whether or not someone had been through a specific form of sexual abuse, or picking up on whether or not someone had found refuge from the traumas that they were experiencing at home, found refuge at school or with friends, because at home they were being put through situations by essentially being parentified by their parents and having the responsibility of being the careholder put on to the child rather than the parent. Just like things like that, that's just going back through a few different readings that I have done for people, and it's just been too accurate too often for me to dismiss as anything other than there has to be something more to this than the five senses. There's got to be the sixth sense operating here. or like, you know, doing a tarot reading for someone and just like saying, this is what I see coming in your future, and, you know, more often than not they'd laugh it off, but then later on down the track, about 6 or 12 months, within about 6 months down the track, they would get back to me and they'd be like, damn you and your cards, Benji, they were right, it turned out right, everything that you said that was going to happen has happened. And I'm like, well, I'm not completely surprised these days. So and I've even had dreams that have come true. So things like that, coupled with my experiences, are what lead me to believe that I 100% am being called by the great spirit that I've come to call it, which is divine source, that I'm being called by the spirits to undergo a shamanic calling and a shamanic initiation so that I may become a full-fledged shaman. And shaman is just a term used for those who are wounded healers, people who have been so tortured psychologically and so tortured and traumatized even externally, but they have managed to find their own way out of that hell and find peace and find healing, and they've been able to do it by themselves and with the help of a symbiosis with nature and with the universe, and as such have learnt how to access certain dimensions of reality in order to gain certain wisdoms and different perspectives and things for healing and truths for healing, and bring that back to this plane of existence, to the physical realm, and not only implement it in their own lives, but offer it to other people so that other people can see that they have the tools, awaken within them the need, well, not the need, but awaken within them the tools that they have and point them in the direction that they need to go in order to get themselves out of their own personal hell. Because the thing about shamans is that we don't want people to be dependent on us for dealing with what's coming in their future or dealing with the shit that's gone down in their past. We want people to be able to be set free to become self-healers, self-diviners, people who recognize that they have the tools within themselves. See, everyone has an inner shaman that needs to be awakened. Doesn't mean everyone is a shaman, but everyone has an inner shaman that needs to be awakened. And when this inner shaman is awakened, so much equilibrium psychologically, emotionally, spiritually can come into balance. Now, it was Michael Harner in the 1980s, at the height of the psychedelic and free love movement that was going on there. He was, you know, amongst the names like Terence McKenna who were getting thrown around, you know, who was a luminary and a scholar and even considered a shaman at the time. And he came up with this term Neo-Shamanism to describe a phenomena that he was seeing happening, where all of a sudden in the Western world, people were seeming to get these legitimate calls to become shamanic healers. It wasn't just in the Eastern world anymore, it was now in the Western world as well, in the developing world. And I can no longer deny that I myself am one of those people. You know, the best counselors for drug addiction are reformed addicts. You know, and any addict who has been to therapy and has found a counsellor who was a reformed addict will tell you that. The best counsellors when it comes to dealing with mental illness are people who have been through it personally and come out the other end well. And any person who is in counselling or therapy due to mental health issues will tell you that. I guarantee it. And it's the same kind of like concept when it comes to shamans, is that the best people to lead you out of spiritual disturbances are shamans, because they have led themselves out of spiritual disturbances and they know how to do it, and they know how to do it safely, even with the implementation of psychedelia, which is a topic for another day. Point that I wanted to make today is what has happened in your life and what sense can be made out of the things that you have experienced when looking through the lens of determinism. Like, rather than looking at all of the things that have gone wrong in your life and just thinking, oh, that's just, crappy stuff that's happened to me, excuse my computer there. Rather than looking at all of these things and just going, oh, that, it's just crappy stuff that's happened to me, I just need to move forward and just leave that in the past. Rather than looking at all the stuff that's happened in your past and just happened to you, all the negative experiences you've been through, and just considering them, just negative experiences that you need to just leave in the past and let's just move on and focus on, what I'm going to do with my life and how I'm going to live despite what I've been through. Rather than looking at it like that, go back and look, rather than looking at it like that, go back and look at these experiences that you've been through and start to ask yourself, what has this set me up to be? What kind of vocation could I take on? What kind of life work could I begin that would have such potency and such power because of the authority that I now hold, having walked through and lived and endured and come out the other end of such experiences that I have been through? See, everyone has a calling. Everyone has a life calling. And it's usually where our greatest passion meets one of the world's greatest needs. And most people who have been through hell and back, they're usually very passionate about the kind of hell that they've been through and the story of how they got through it. But people they don't usually go beyond that. They might share that story with people from time to time and they might find that it's helpful for people for here and there, but they're missing the opportunity to turn that, to alchemize that into sovereign power and to say, no, I'm going to harness this and actually use it to leave a bigger and larger and lasting impact on the world that future generations might be able to even benefit from. So that's my message for you today. Look back through your life. Look back through the crappy things that you have endured and that you have come out the other side of and survived. So that you, those things where you no longer think of yourself as a victim, but you think of yourself as a survivor. And ask yourself, what fiery crucible was that? And what did it prepare me for? What is it that I can now do that I previously could not done? What is it that I can now do that I previously could not have done if I had not lived through those experiences? And then dare to be brave and implement that in whatever unique way you see fit to make this world better and to make tomorrow a better place today. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell. As always, drop a comment in the comment box below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Love you guys.